The energy of money needs space to flow. This truth whispers like the wind through open fields in the countryside, where branches bend gently and nothing seems to be in a hurry. Money is not something to be forced or captured. It moves like a silent river between rocks, always seeking the clearest path. Sometimes it passes through us, but doesn't enter because there is no space within. Only when we create this space, without tension, without noise, does it find passage. Imagine walking through the Montana hills at dawn, feeling the dew beneath your feet and the mist slowly lifting with the first rays of the sun. In that silence, something reorganizes itself within, a sense that there's no need to rush, because everything is already happening. The energy of money is like this mist. It arrives slowly, entering where the warmth of presence invites it, and disappears where there's noise and fear. It responds not to urgency, but to quiet openness. In the calm deserts of New Mexico, the wind draws invisible paths in the sand. It doesn't ask permission. It doesn't wait for commands. Money is like that too, a movement that responds to whatever vibrates in harmony with it. And where there is excess desire, there is blockage. Where there is inner space, there is flow. Letting go isn't giving up. It's yielding to the invisible intelligence that moves the universe and that also moves money. Nature never rushes its course, and yet everything happens. Trees grow without pushing time, rivers reach the ocean without haste, and clouds bring rain when the air is ready. In Taoism, there is a principle called Wu Wei, which invites us to act effortlessly, without resistance. This doesn't mean doing nothing, but rather doing it with alignment, listening, and attunement. Abundance is not born of force, but of harmony with the invisible rhythm of things. In places like Sonoma Valley, time seems to breathe slowly. The vines grow year after year, surrendered to the seasons. They don't require a harvest. They simply follow the cycle already written in the earth. Money, like ripe fruit, comes when the time is right. When we try to force its appearance, we harvest it too soon, and the flavor is lost. Wu Wei reminds us that less effort isn't less action, it's action in the right flow. There's a common illusion that prosperity is the result of sweat, pain, and struggle. But water doesn't break through rock with force. It works around it. Day after day, with gentleness and persistence, it transforms the hardest into softness. Likewise, money comes when we stop fighting it, when we stop seeing life as a battlefield. The universe responds to what is light, what is present, what is real. In the stillness of the prairies, animals graze confidently. There is no anxiety in their eyes, no need to prove their worth. They know the land will provide. Wu Wei is this silent knowing. It's walking knowing the ground will be there. Money is attracted to this state not by the cry of need, but by the murmur of presence. When you let go of obsession, you create space for abundance to breathe. It's common to want to control every detail, every number, every result. But this control is like trying to tame the wind with your hands. The energy of money escapes excess. Tension. It flows where there is lightness, where action is a response, not an imposition. The more we try to force, the more distant we become. The paradox is this: when we stop trying so hard, we begin to receive more. When we cease the struggle, the river returns. In some places, like the quiet trails of Colorado, it's possible to understand what the Tao means. There's no need to speak, nor to rush. Just being there is enough of a response. Wu Wei is this: allowing the path to lead you instead of pushing it with your shoulders. Money moves the same way. When you relax into the right pace, it comes with the breeze, not the gale. Some people believe that nothing will come without effort. But look at the sky. It doesn't scream for the sun to rise, it simply opens. Nature teaches that nothing true can be forced. Money is no exception. It's part of the same field, the same dance, the same silence. And the more you try to control it, the further it will retreat. But when you simply be there, present, it can arrive. Wu Wei is not a method, it's a surrender. An internal state that recognizes that life knows more than the mind. It's not about giving up on action, but about acting with less noise and more listening. About moving only when something within you is ready. Just as a bird doesn't fly without wind, you don't need to act without flow. Abundance respects this alignment. In the tranquil fields of Georgia, there are moments when time seems to stand still. The harvest arrives not because someone shouted, but because everything aligned: the land, the weather, the waiting, the faith. Wu Wei lives in these moments when we don't make things happen, but let them happen. And money, when respected at this pace, doesn't just come, it stays. There's a gentle strength in not forcing. A wisdom that whispers, don't push what's already coming. When you enter this frequency, something changes. You stop being the one who runs and become the one who attracts. Money recognizes this state. It flows to those who don't hold it back, suffocate it, or demand it. It arrives where there's space to receive it without fear. Grass doesn't grow faster because someone is watching, and yet it grows. Wu Wei is the state of one who knows that everything has its right time, and while waiting, one lives. One doesn't postpone peace until after the outcome. Money responds to this vibration. It is attracted to the living now, not the anxious anticipation of tomorrow. In the mountains of Jins, Utah, the stones hold millennia of silence. There, we learn that time has a different language, that everything moves, even when it doesn't seem to. Money moves this way too. It listens to silence, not effort. It approaches when it's not pressured, and moves away when it becomes a demand. Less effort doesn't mean less involvement. It means engaging with ease. The artist who loses track of time is in Wu Wei. The farmer who plants with love, not in haste, is also in Wu Wei. Money is born from these frequencies, from these presences. It sprouts where there is inner space, where action is a natural gesture, and not an attempt to prove something. The paradox, then, is simple. Those who chase money usually push it away. Those who live with presence, curiously, attract it. Not because they don't care, but because they don't need to prove anything. Life is already on their side. The flow is already moving. Just don't block it. Just don't urgently interrupt what would come gently. What often interrupts the flow of prosperity is not outside, but within. An anxious mind creates waves that agitate the surface of the inner lake, preventing any reflection from revealing itself. It's like trying to see the bottom of the water while the surface is turbulent. Money, being a subtle energy, doesn't approach noisy fields. It prefers silence, clarity, and a space without resistance. Hands that hold too tightly hold nothing. They try to grasp the flow, but only push it away. Anxiety tightens the chest, freezes the breath, fills time with urgency. All of this contaminates the field where abundance circulates. When the body is tense, the universe feels it. When the mind demands, the flow closes. There is wisdom in relaxing, not as an escape, but as a release from excess. Imagine someone trying to hear the sound of a falling leaf while screaming. It's impossible. The same thing happens with money when we try to attract it through fear. The inner noise prevents us from hearing the subtle reality. The mind, gripped by the fear of scarcity, generates images of urgency and survival. But money doesn't respond to fear. It moves toward quiet trust. In the silent landscapes of Wyoming, you can feel the weight lifting from your shoulders. There's a kind of peace that can't be explained, only inhabited. And this peace is fertilizer for the flow of abundance. Anxiety, on the other hand, dries up the soil. Even if you've planted good seeds, they don't grow in the face of mental storms. The soil of the soul needs rest. It's not about stopping thinking, but about not feeding the thoughts that close the doors to flow. When the mind insists on controlling, it distances itself from the body's wisdom. And the body knows. It knows when to act and when to wait. It knows when to move forward and when to simply breathe. Money recognizes this balance. It is attracted to those who are not at war with time. Anxiety is like a field full of thorns. It hinders the entry of all that is gentle. The energy of money doesn't enter by force. It approaches like a visitor that needs to be gently invited. When there's noise, it waits. When there's fear, it observes. When there's space, it arrives. The anxious mind, no matter how much it wants, blocks what it most seeks. At times, overthinking is like a thick fog. We can't see the opportunities or feel the answers. Everything becomes confusing. Anxiety paints scenarios of scarcity even when the field is fertile. It makes us forget that money isn't about control but flow. And flow only reveals itself where there is clarity and surrender. The problem isn't wanting money, but fearing it. Fearing it because you don't have it. Fearing it because you lose it. Fearing it because you don't deserve it. And all this fear creates a wall. Wu Wei invites us to look at it without trying to solve it, without trying to control it. Just look. Like looking at a stone in the path before moving it with open hands, with presence, without rushing. In the serene lakes of Minnesota, fish appear when there is no sudden movement. Inner life is the same. If you are agitated, nothing comes near. But when you stop, breathe, observe, something begins to shift. Ideas come. The right people appear. Opportunities flow. Not by magic, but by alignment. Anxiety loses power when you stop feeding it with urgency. The anxious mind wants proof, wants guarantees, wants to control tomorrow. But money isn't born tomorrow. It's born now. It appears when there's presence, not when there's foresight. Planning is useful, but living in the plan is forgetting about real life. Money is sensitive. It senses whether you're present or lost in the mind's projections. People who live in money anxiety often live out of body. They're trapped in thoughts that never materialize. Wu Wei is a return to the body, to the here and now. When you feel your feet on the ground, your breath in your chest, life changes tone, and this new tone is the tone of abundance. It's gentle yet firm, calm yet full of presence. In an anxious mind, everything seems urgent, but few things truly are. When you begin to differentiate this, you create space. And space is everything. Without space, nothing fits. With space, anything can happen. Money comes when there is emotional, mental, and even physical space, a clean desk, free time, a mindful pause. All of this invites the flow back. The mind, however brilliant, is not where money is born. It is born in the field, in feeling, in connection with the whole. Of course, the mind can help, but only when it is in service of the soul, not of urgency. When you allow your mind to rest, money finds its way. It recognizes this relief as an invitation. Anxiety is a hunger for control. Wu Wei is the surrender of hunger. Not because it doesn't exist, but because you stop being confused by it. You observe, breathe, and withdraw. And in this pause, the flow returns. Money becomes a welcome visitor again, not a hurtful obsession. It becomes energy in motion again, not a weight on your shoulders. When you relax, the universe listens. When you let go, the path appears. It's not a promise of immediate wealth, but of reconnection. And when this reconnection happens, money comes as a consequence, not as a goal, because now there's space. And the energy of money needs space to flow. Money listens to silence, not to the cries of urgency. It doesn't respond to tension or the agitation that comes from fear. The energy of abundance recognizes calm fields, clear minds, and trusting hearts. It's like a breeze coming through an open window. When there's too much noise, doors close, the air stops circulating, and nothing new enters. On certain Oregon mornings, when mist blankets the forests and the world seems suspended, you can feel what silence holds. It's not emptiness. It's power. It's the space where anything can happen. Money comes from this same place, from the gap between one thought and another, from the space between action and waiting. It doesn't require effort. It requires clarity. Inner silence is not the absence of ideas, but the absence of noise. It's the state in which you can hear what the universe is saying, even without words. When you become still, you begin to perceive the signs, the opportunities, the invisible connections. Money finds its way when you stop pushing and start listening. In the vastness of the Nebraska plains, there's a kind of peace that can't be sold. A sense that everything is in place, even when nothing seems to be happening. This state is a magnet. The energy of money is drawn to this tranquility. Not because there's movement, but because there's reception. Not because there's ambition, but because there's real space. Everything of value is born in silence. Gestation happens in the dark. So does root growth. Groundwater moves silently. Money, when it's real, follows this same rhythm. It sprouts without fanfare. It arrives when the ground is calm. When you create an inner space without demands, it comes as a natural consequence. There are people who constantly scream for solutions, unaware that the answer is already there, but buried in the noise. A noisy mind is like an out-of-tune radio. It only transmits static. When you silence, you tune in. And on that frequency, money appears. Not as something you call upon, but as something that simply responds. Silence isn't something to be sought in a hurry. It's a state you allow yourself. Just as the sea calms after a storm, you can also calm down after anxiety. It's not an immediate process, but it is possible. And when it happens, there's a kind of presence that transforms everything. From there, money stops being a problem. and becomes a flow again. On remote trails in Arizona, it's common to encounter the absence of urban sounds. Just the wind, the birds, and breathing itself. In this space, something reorganizes itself within. The body slows down, time expands. This is the fertile ground where abundance can land. Silence isn't unproductive, it's creative. It's the cradle of the new. Sometimes it's not that money is far away, it's that it can't find a quiet place to enter. A busy life, full of goals and urgencies, doesn't create that place. But a leisurely walk, a guilt-free pause, a deep breath, these open portals. Money needs a silent invitation, not a loud demand. Many confuse inaction with futility. But Wu Wei reminds us that not acting is also acting when there is wisdom in the moment. Silence is a form of action. An action that clears the field, that organizes the chaos. When the internal noise subsides, the external responds. And money notices. It moves toward what is light. It's not about standing still and waiting for miracles. It's about acting without urgency, speaking without shouting, living without tension. It's a lighter, more sensitive way of being. In this state, you begin to notice when the flow approaches, and it approaches gently. The energy of money doesn't push. It flows where there's an opening. In silence, you realize you don't need to convince anything or anyone. What's yours finds its way to you. Money, when it comes in this flow, doesn't come to fill a void, but to expand what's already full. It recognizes states of silent gratitude, of presence without demands, and it chooses these places to manifest. In a lonely cabin in the mountains, someone meditates. They seek nothing. They simply are. And it is in this state that something new is born. Money, in this case, can come as an insight, an unexpected connection, a synchronicity. There is no effort, there is listening. And everything born from listening tends to endure because it has true roots. Silence is fertile. It allows life to speak. And life speaks all the time, but few listen. Money is no different. It whispers. Paths, possibilities, frequencies. To hear it, you have to silence fear, silence excess, rest in the present. And when that happens, something new begins to circulate. Prosperity doesn't shout. It walks slowly. It arrives without fanfare, settles calmly, and remains where it finds peace. Creating this space doesn't require technique, just intention. The intention to pause, to listen, to not dominate, because money doesn't need to be earned. It needs to be invited, and the invitation is made in silence. Nature never hurries, and yet everything happens in its own time. Water finds its way even between rocks. Leaves fall when it's time, without resistance. Tides rise and fall with the silent influence of the moon, without anyone needing to remind them. The natural flow of things requires no effort, only space. Money belongs to this same principle. It moves with the flow, not with force. Walking through an open field in rural Texas, you can sense how everything is in motion, even in the stillness. The clouds follow their course, the flowers bloom, the wind rustles the branches. None of this happens in a hurry, and yet nothing stands still. Prosperity is like this too. When we live in harmony with this rhythm, it manifests. When we fight against it, it retreats. Migratory birds don't fight the wind. They harness the right current and travel thousands of kilometers with minimal wear and tear. Money follows the same principle. It goes further when you follow it, not when you try to control it. Wu Wei isn't the absence of movement. It's movement in tune with the invisible order of life. It's dancing with what is, not against it. On the California coast, the sea teaches us rhythm. With each wave that leaves, another returns. With each ebb, an ebb. When we try to hold money like a fixed tide, we lose the essence of movement. It comes and goes. Knowing this is wisdom. Letting go when it leaves, trusting that it will return. Nature trusts. And human beings, when they reconnect with it, also learn to trust. The power of water lies in its flexibility. It flows, penetrates, dissolves. It doesn't fight, it simply finds its way. Money, when treated with this same approach, flows much more naturally. It goes where there's least resistance. If there's tension, it flows around. If there's space, it enters. The secret isn't rigidity, but openness. In places like the wheat fields of Dakota, the wind dances over the crops as if it has been rehearsing its steps for millennia. Nothing resists. Everything yields gently. And in this yielding, there is beauty and abundance. Money behaves this way too. It settles into those who don't treat it harshly, but with respect and dedication. Those who learn from nature understand the flow. Trees don't compete with each other to grow. Each seeks the light in its own way. They grow in their own time, in their own direction. There's no rush, only expansion. Money feels comfortable with this kind of energy. It gravitates toward those who grow naturally, those who don't try to be more than they are, but expand authentically. Nothing in the desert tries to change the rhythm of time. The heat arrives, the cold arrives at night, and life adapts. Prosperity arises from this acceptance of what is. When you try to force an outcome outside of the right time, the field closes. But when you act in alignment with the moment, the universe responds. The right action at the right time is Wu Wei in its essence. In nature, movement is not frenetic, but constant. Even stones transform over time. There is flux in everything. Money, when treated as part of this cycle, ceases to be a problem and becomes an expression. It becomes part of life, like the sun, water, and wind. Not something to be mastered, but something to be understood. If you watch an eagle soar, you'll see that it soars more than it flaps its wings. It uses air currents, conserves energy. This is what Wu Wei is all about, using what's already happening to your advantage. Money can be like this too, something that arrives because you stopped struggling and began to sense the right moment. To move, prosperity prefers light flight to desperate running. Roots grow in the dark without an audience. They don't ask for permission to exist. Abundance also sprouts this way. First in the invisible, then in the visible. If you try to accelerate this cycle, you'll harvest the unripe fruit. But if you observe and respect life's timing, what arrives has flavor. Nature shows us this every day if we're willing to listen. A river doesn't argue with a stone, it simply flows around it. Prosperity, faced with mental obstacles, does the same. If you're rigid, it deflects. If you're in flux, it returns. Water never doubts it will find the sea. Money, like this water, also knows the way. What it needs is for you to stop interrupting its course. Nature teaches without words. It teaches through the repetition of cycles, through the constancy of transformation, through the silence of growth. It doesn't exalt itself. It doesn't justify itself. It simply is. Money, when aligned with this same naturalness, loses the weight we place upon it. It ceases to be torment and becomes movement once again. Watching a field of sunflowers follow the sunlight, we understand what it means to act effortlessly. They don't think, they just respond. And it is in this natural response that they live in abundance. Money follows this same principle. It responds to what is real, what is alive, what is not fake. The more authentic you are, the more the flow recognizes your field. Everything that is forced in nature breaks. Everything that is fluid adapts and survives. Money, in its most subtle form, prefers fluidity. It approaches those who yield, those who observe, those who respect the natural rhythm of things. And when it arrives, it brings with it a sense of belonging, as if it had always been there, just waiting for you to be ready. There was a man who lived in a small wooden house in the mountains of Colorado. He spent his days trying to find ways to get rich, studying methods, accumulating ideas, running from one place to another in search of the perfect formula. But even with all his effort, the money never seemed to stick. It always slipped away, like sand through his fingers. Each attempt generated more frustration, more noise, more tension in his body and mind. One day, tired of fighting, he decided to simply stop. Not out of surrender, but out of silent exhaustion. He sat down in front of the frozen lake near his home and simply stood there. He didn't think about strategies. He didn't plan anything. He simply breathed and observed the stillness of the white landscape, the distant sound of branches moving in the wind, the silence broken only by the faint sound of water thawing in the morning sun. Hours passed like that, which felt like days. And in that empty space that opened up inside him, a new idea arrived. It didn't come as a grand revelation, but as a quiet whisper. He thought of something he'd always loved, carving wood. For years, he'd ignored it because he thought it wouldn't make money. But there, in the silence, the idea came lightly. What if he made just one piece? Just for the fun of it, without expecting anything? He returned home and carved it. A piece of pine, a few hours of work, and no expectations. The sculpture turned out beautifully. He placed it in the window, and a few days later, a passerby wanted to buy it. The amount he received wasn't high, but the feeling was unlike anything he'd ever experienced. For the first time, money came fluidly, effortlessly, like an extension of who he already was. Excited but still calm, he continued sculpting. Unhurried, without a goal, just doing. People began arriving. Sometimes they bought, other times they just chatted. And in these conversations, new connections, new ideas, new opportunities emerged. Money began to circulate, not as a result of a search, but as a reflection of a broader, more open, more truthful inner state. One day, someone offered to help him promote his pieces. Another day, a local shop asked for more sculptures. He never chased after them. He simply remained present in what he loved, in what flowed, and over time, his income grew. But most importantly, his peace grew as well. He no longer depended on anxiety to act. He acted with pleasure, with dedication, with listening. Years later, looking back, he understood. Money had always been there. But he was always too busy trying to grab it, instead of creating space for it to enter. That pause before the lake was the beginning of it all. It was there that he learned what Wu Wei truly means: doing without forcing, living without tension, trusting without controlling. Similarly, in a coastal town in Maine, a woman was also trapped in effort. She tried to grow her business, invested in courses, and spent sleepless nights perfecting every detail. But the results weren't coming. And the more she tried, the more exhausted she became. Until one day, out of the blue, she decided to shut everything down for a while. Just stop, take care of herself, go back to basics. In the days that followed, she walked along the beach without thinking about business. She simply observed the sea, the boats, the slow steps of the fishermen. And it was there, without seeking anything, that a new vision emerged. Something simple, authentic, lighter. A new way of offering her work connected to what truly meant to her. And when she returned, people came. They felt the difference. They felt the silence. These stories aren't about miracles, they're about rhythm. About choosing to listen to what the body and soul already knew. When control gives way to trust, flow returns. When haste subsides, the answer appears. Money in these cases wasn't pursued, it was invited. And it accepted the invitation because there was room, because there was truth. Wu Wei is not a path of abandonment, but of presence. Neither these characters nor those who listen to them need to abandon everything. But they can release tension. They can open their bodies to listen. They can rest their control for a moment and allow something new to enter. Money comes more easily through paths that are not forced, and each story, like these, is a reminder of this. In real life, almost no one teaches this. Most say it takes effort, sacrifice, sweat. But nature doesn't confirm this view. Water doesn't scream to reach the sea. It flows. Seeds don't demand. They wait. And the universe, as in these stories, rewards those who act with listening, with surrender, with truth. It's not magic, it's alignment. The flow of life is constantly trying to manifest itself. Sometimes, all it needs is for you to stop for a moment, to let go of the reins for a moment, to feel what you truly want, not what you've learned to want. Because it's in this space, in this interval between doing and allowing, that the truest money finds passage. Money isn't just something you collect, count, or hoard. It's, first and foremost, a vibration. An energy field that moves according to your emission. Like sound that needs harmony to be music, money needs harmony to flow smoothly. When the vibration is out of alignment, it doesn't respond. When it's in harmony, it comes effortlessly. On a quiet afternoon in rural North Carolina, the sound of a guitar filled the air. A musician, alone on the porch, played unhurriedly, without an audience, without needing applause. It was just him, the breeze, and the sound. That moment held something pure, true, aligned. Money is also attracted to this kind of vibration, the state in which everything is whole, without pressure, without interference. Tuning in isn't something you manufacture. It's something you find. It's like slowly turning the knob on an old radio station until you hear a voice clearly amidst the noise. The flow of money works the same way. There's a lot of noise in the air, thoughts, fears, demands. But when you silence the excess and turn inward, the right frequency appears. Wu Wei invites us to act within this harmony. It's not about not acting, but about acting lightly, clearly, with clean energy. It's about doing things because there's pleasure in doing them, not because there's despair in doing them. It's like dancing to the right beat without needing to think about the steps. Money recognizes this dance. It flows to those who resonate with the music of their own essence. We often seek money as if it were outside, hidden somewhere difficult to access. But what if it were inside? Not as a sum of money, but as a quality of being, an inner presence that begins to alter the surrounding field. When you enter a state of trust, listening, and surrender, something shifts in your frequency, and the external world responds. The Vermont mountains at dusk exude this energy of attunement. Nothing there tries to be more than it is. Everything simply vibrates in its own nature, and this state is abundant in itself. Money thrives on this kind of environment, calm, present, whole. It doesn't need promises or speeches. It feels, and it aligns itself where there is vibrational truth. There are people who do a lot and receive little. Others do less and are surrounded by abundance. The difference isn't always in the action, but in the frequency. Doing, in itself, doesn't guarantee flow, but the internal state with which you do it does. When you act from fear, the field contracts. When you act from presence, it opens. Wu Wei doesn't require effort. It requires alignment. It's a way of living that respects one's own rhythm, that listens to the body, that acts with clarity and not impulse. And this way of being affects the surrounding field. It creates resonance, and in this resonance, money finds passage, because it senses where there is truth and where there is noise. The frequency of money doesn't respond to demands, but to coherence. The coherence between what you feel, do, and emit. When there's congruence, everything falls into place. And you don't need to chase after it, because what's on the same vibration as you naturally comes closer. Not magically, but as a consequence. When observing the water of a clear stream, one realizes that purity lies not only in the absence of dirt, but in the fluidity with which it moves. The same is true for the field of prosperity. The cleaner its vibration, the clearer the flow. Money, like water, prefers free paths, pure vibrations, true presence. The waves of the sea don't compete with each other. They follow the rhythm of the tide, and each one fulfills its role. Some break with force, others glide gently on the sand. Money too has its tide, its own rhythm of arrival and departure. And tuning into this means stopping resistance and starting to dance with the natural movement of life. The most beautiful music isn't the most complex, it's the most honest. The frequency of abundance is similar. It doesn't require technical effort, but vibrational sincerity. When you are fully present in what you do, in what you feel, in what you are, money feels it. It moves toward what is alive, to what pulses with truth. Think of butterflies in a field of flowers. They're not attracted by screams, but by scent, color, and lightness. Money is a butterfly, and its vibrational field is the garden. When you tend to your vibration without obsession, simply with presence, it appears. Not because it was called, but because it was welcomed. Everything that connects communicates. When you enter the frequency of abundance, you begin to converse with it. Not with words, but with your state of being. And in this silent conversation, invisible agreements occur. Money feels at home where there is vibrational truth, and it remains where there is peace. Life doesn't respond to what you say, but to what you vibrate. And money, as part of this life, follows the same rule. When you align internally, the external world adjusts. Prosperity becomes a consequence, not a goal. Because you are already in tune with it, effortlessly, fearlessly, and without noise. Many people ask for abundance, but carry within them this silent belief that they don't deserve it. They make affirmations, repeat mantras, but deep down they still feel indebted to life, and this feeling creates a closed-off field. The energy of money doesn't enter where it isn't allowed to receive. Receiving is an art, but it's also a surrender, allowing yourself to be nourished, supported, and welcomed. In rural Kansas, after a long drought, the land finally receives rain. Not because it begged for it, but because the time was right. And when the water touches the ground, everything begins to bloom. The field doesn't question whether it's worthy of being watered. It simply opens. The same is true of money. It arrives when the inner field is ready to receive it, without resistance, without judgment. Wu Wei teaches us to allow the movement of life, the arrival of the new, the blossoming of possibilities. Often, we are so accustomed to fighting that we forget what it's like to simply receive. The energy of money needs free space, but also an open heart. A heart that says, yes, I accept. Yes, I trust. Yes, I allow myself to be cared for. In our hectic daily lives, it's common to hear that only those who deserve it, those who work hard, those who sacrifice, receive it. But nature doesn't say that. It gives without charge. The sun doesn't choose who to shine on. The rain doesn't choose which leaves to water. Money, in its purest essence, isn't tied to punishment or reward. It simply flows, and those who are open to it welcome it. There's a difference between asking and being available. Asking can come from need. Being available comes from trust. It's like a fertile field that doesn't chase clouds. It's simply ready. When you relax your expectations and tend to your inner soil, the rain comes. Money senses this space. It senses when there's a receptive body, without fear, without haste. Simply present. In the Arizona deserts, certain flowers only bloom after many months of waiting. They don't force themselves. They simply remain ready. And when the water arrives, they open without hesitation. This is the state of receiving, being ready without anxiety, being open without demands, being whole without the need to prove anything to the universe. Receiving is also trusting that you are part of the whole, that you are not separate from life, nor from the flow, that what comes to you is not theft, nor luck, nor privilege. It is return. It is balance. It is a response to your vibrational state. When you place yourself as part of abundance, it responds. But while you feel outside of it, you observe it from afar. Worthiness doesn't come from guilt, but from connection. You don't have to pay a price to be worthy of receiving. You just need to remember who you are. And this remembering brings relief. It lifts the weight. It opens the heart. It frees the entrance. Money doesn't require excessive effort, it requires alignment. And being aligned is being at peace with the act of receiving. On many retreats in the Oregon forests, people spend days simply learning to listen to what is already present. And in this silence, they realize there's no need to rush. That everything is already coming, in its own time through the right path. Receiving is listening to this with your body. It's feeling that everything is on its way, even when nothing seems to be moving. The act of receiving is simple, but it's been layered with shame and belief. It's common to feel guilty about prospering, fear of loss, and doubt about worthiness. But Wu Wei gently dissolves this. It teaches that there is no separation between you and the flow. That prosperity is natural when you stop protecting yourself from it. Opening the field means opening the body. It means relaxing the stomach, the shoulders, the jaw. It means allowing the breath to go deeper, because the body also speaks to the universe. And a tense body says, "I'm not ready." A relaxed body says, "Come in." Money listens to this language, and it responds to the truth of the body more than to the words of the mind. In certain parts of the southern United States, people still welcome others with simplicity. A chair on the porch, a cool drink, a moment of leisure that isn't urgent. This kind of welcome is the same one money seeks. A calm space where it can enter and remain, where it's neither idolized nor rejected, just welcomed. The energy of receiving also involves allowing others to contribute. Many refuse help, gifts, and opportunities because they feel they have to achieve everything alone. But the universe also manifests itself through others. Receiving from others is also receiving from life. And when you allow this, you open more channels of flow. The field of abundance is always available. But you need to be present to it. You need to see yourself as part of it, not as someone trying to achieve something distant. You need to trust that there's already a yes waiting for you, but that you may still be saying no without realizing it. Receiving is saying yes, a silent but complete yes. Money comes more easily when you stop fighting the idea of deserving it. When you stop defending yourself against abundance. When you abandon the belief that you need to suffer to be rewarded. Receiving is allowing yourself to be cared for by life without justification, without guilt, without effort. There comes a time when there's nothing left to seek, only what to allow. The energy of money needs space to flow, and this space isn't external, not in bills, goals, or calculations. This space lives within, in the silence that doesn't ask, but welcomes. When you let go of the effort to control the invisible, something opens and money feels it. It comes like the wind coming through a forgotten window, like water finding its way through rocks. It's not about having less ambition, but about having more confidence. It's not about giving up on action, but about acting with ease. Money flows when we stop making it a field of tension. When we stop shouting, it listens. When we stop pressing, it comes closer. The flow that once seemed so distant begins to respond, because now there's room for it to be what it always was, a reflection of your inner presence. True abundance doesn't reside in extremes or excess. It flourishes in a natural rhythm, in the right pace, in silent listening. It appears when you no longer need to prove anything, when you no longer demand immediate returns, when you no longer depend on results to feel whole. And that's where money comes in, not as a savior, but as an extension of a state. It comes when life is already alive enough to no longer need it as justification. Just as a still lake attracts life around it without moving, you too can attract everything you seek effortlessly, without noise, without urgency. The flow begins within. Abundance begins in the body. Money, when it flows naturally, is just another reflection of what you have become capable of allowing. What if what you seek was already on its way, but your haste prevented it from arriving?